She waited for a man who wasn't real. Not because she was naive, but because she believed in the soul more than she trusted her eyes. He wasn't a man so much as a reflection, a constellation of meanings stitched together by her own longing. Every silence he gave her, she filled with poetry. Every absence, she mistook for mystery. She didn't fall in love, she fell into projection. You know this story. You've lived it in the spaces between texts that never came, in the ache of what could have been if he had only seen you. But the truth is, he did see you, just not the you thought he did. He saw the performance you perfected, soft but strong, patient but infinite, the woman who could wait without breaking. Waiting became her devotion. The altar was his potential, and so she waited, for the message that never arrived, for the apology that was always almost spoken, for the version of him that existed only inside her nervous system. It wasn't obsession, it was worship, because what she was really waiting for wasn't a man. It was completion. In Jungian language, what she loved was her own animus, the internal masculine that promised wholeness. He was the mirror her unconscious built to contain every lost fragment of power she once disowned. When he didn't text back, it wasn't rejection, it was initiation. His absence called her into confrontation with the void inside her. But the feminine psyche rarely recognizes this at first. To her, distance feels like death. The feminine wants connection, not analysis. She merges to survive, and so she'll turn a ghost into a god before she admits she's alone. Every unanswered message becomes an oracle. Every mixed signal, a myth. She'll tell herself he's busy, overwhelmed, afraid to love her properly, when in truth, it's her own fear she's trying to soothe. The fear that if she stops believing in his potential, she'll have to feel her own emptiness. You've seen women like this. Eyes wide with knowing, hearts heavy with patience. They say they're holding space, but what they're really doing is negotiating with fantasy. They're not waiting for a man, they're waiting for permission to stop dreaming. But here is the paradox. The more she waits, the less she remembers her own reality. Desire rewires her logic. Time becomes elastic, memory becomes selective, and she begins to speak in archetypes. He's my twin flame. He's not ready yet. Our souls already know. It's not delusion. It's the psyche's defense against annihilation. The unconscious feminine doesn't chase, she magnetizes. But magnetism, without awareness, becomes captivity. And so she waits, not because he's special, but because the silence between them has become sacred. The mirror doesn't lie, but it does distort. When you look long enough into a fantasy, it starts looking back. She saw in him what she had repressed in herself: strength, certainty, direction. He saw in her what he had lost: softness, surrender, grace. Together, they formed an illusion, an archetypal dance between masculine projection and feminine hunger. It felt divine because it was, but only in a psychological sense. Every myth begins as a projection. Every god was once a symbol of someone's inner split. And so she waited not for him, but for the part of herself that could finally see through the illusion. But until that moment, she called it love. In another life, she might have been the oracle, the one who waited at the temple gates for signs from gods who never spoke. Now the temple is digital. Her altar glows in blue light. The gods are men with profiles. The offerings are attention, patience, and the currency of hope. And still, she waits. Because every feminine heart remembers the original myth, that love will find her, that patience redeems all pain, that someday someone will see her depth and never leave. But no one tells her that he, the man she imagines, was never real. He was her psyche's scaffolding, built to hold the weight of her own divinity until she could stand on her own. She waited for a man who wasn't real, and in doing so, she met the part of herself that was finally ready to be. The descent always begins in silence. That's how the feminine unconscious calls her down, not with fire, but with absence. He fades, she spirals, and somewhere between the last message and the first night she sleeps without checking her phone, the real initiation begins. The outer man disappears, but the inner one awakens. He's no longer a person. He's an archetype. This is where Jung meets heartbreak. The man she loved was never just a man. He was her animus projection, the psychological masculine every woman carries within. In his eyes, she saw her own capacity for logic, protection, and power. In his touch, she felt the union of opposites her psyche has been craving since birth. But the unconscious doesn't grant wholeness cheaply. It seduces through symbols. He became her mirror, and the reflection was cruelly precise. Every time he withdrew, he mirrored the part of her that withholds from herself. Every time he doubted her, he embodied the voice of her own inner skeptic, the one who whispers, "You are too much. You are never enough." To the uninitiated, it looks like rejection. To the awakened, it is revelation. In the dreamscape of the psyche, the animus begins as the savior and ends as the judge. At first, he offers rescue. He will understand me. He will make me feel safe. But later, he becomes the law. He didn't choose me because I'm not ready, because I'm still broken. She turns his silence into scripture. His absence becomes evidence of her worth, or lack of it. The more he withdraws, the deeper she digs into self-analysis, trying to decode the meaning behind his distance, not realizing that the meaning isn't his to give. The woman who waits for a man who isn't real is actually waiting for the masculine within her to awaken, the one who says, "Enough," the one who builds boundaries instead of fantasies. Every projection is a contract. The psyche offers illusion in exchange for awareness. When the illusion finally cracks, the awareness must rise. But awakening feels like loss, because she must mourn the man who never existed and the version of herself that needed him to. This mourning is sacred. It's the burning away of the myth that love is found through devotion to someone else. It's the moment the goddess becomes human, the return from archetype to embodiment. She begins to see the pattern in others too. The woman who forgives too soon. The one who mistakes chaos for chemistry. The one who calls control protection. Each is worshipping her own reflection, disguised as desire. In every era, this myth repeats. Eurydice follows Orpheus. Psyche searches for Eros. The modern woman waits for his text. Dix francs centuries, Sam descend. But this descent is not punishment, it's purification. The underworld strips her of illusion, so she can stand naked before truth. There is no man who completes her. There is only the inner union between the wild and the wise, the soft and the strong. You see, the psyche does not seek love, it seeks wholeness. Love is merely the mirror it uses to reveal the fracture. Once she understands this, she stops waiting for the reflection to return. She turns toward the mirror itself. There, she meets him again, not the man who left, but the one who lives inside her. He is not romantic. He is structural. He is her discernment, her discipline, her sacred distance. He tells her what no lover ever could. You were never meant to be chosen. You were meant to choose. And in that moment, something changes. She no longer needs his attention to feel real. Her silence becomes full, not empty. Her patience becomes power, not paralysis. She is no longer waiting. She is listening to herself. The descent ends where the shadow meets the flame. In recognition, not rescue. The breaking point doesn't come with tears, it comes with clarity. One morning, the waiting simply collapses under its own weight. The illusion that held her together starts to dissolve, and she feels it, a quiet implosion beneath the ribs. It's not heartbreak, it's exorcism. For the first time, she stops asking why he didn't choose her and begins to ask why she chose to wait. You know that moment when your body still aches for someone, but your soul no longer kneels. When the fantasy loses its flavor, and reality becomes strangely beautiful in its simplicity. That's the confrontation, the moment your own logic meets your longing and refuses to keep pretending. He never lied. He simply existed at the level of her projection. He could only give what she asked for, unconsciously distance, mystery, absence. He was the echo, not the voice. When she said, "I want depth," what she meant was, "I want to feel alive." And the psyche will use anything, even pain, to make her feel that way. The truth burns. She was addicted to uncertainty because it made her feel significant. Each unanswered message wasn't rejection. It was proof she could still hope. Hope is a drug disguised as devotion. She wanted him to see her worth. But worth cannot be proven through someone else's blindness. You cannot make the mirror see itself. So she breaks. Not loudly, elegantly. The kind of breaking that looks like stillness, but feels like lightning. Every memory turns from story to data. His promises, her patterns, the late-night spirals, all decoded into truth. This was never about him. He was the image, her unconscious, sculpted to reveal her own fracture. He carried the mask her animus once wore, confident, distant, magnetic. And when he left, he took the mask with him, forcing her to look at the face underneath. Confrontation is cruel mercy. It demands the death of illusion, but gives birth to sight. The woman who waited now stands at the doorway between what was imagined and what is real. Behind her, the fantasy. Before her, the unknown. And between them, the mirror. She looks into it and sees both the girl who waited and the woman who watches. The girl believed in the promise of the other. The woman believes in the promise of herself. The polarity collapses. The divine feminine no longer needs to be saved. The inner masculine no longer needs to disappear. She realizes she never wanted a man. She wanted to feel safe inside her own chaos. And the only one who could give her that safety was the part of herself she had been projecting all along. You, too, have known this mirror. You've seen the face that changes every time you fall in love, how each lover becomes the archetype you've yet to claim. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you are unaware of. Desire is not choice, it's communication. The unconscious speaks in attraction, in obsession, in chemistry. Every love story is the psyche trying to reassemble itself. Every heartbreak is the psyche tearing away what no longer fits. This is not punishment, it's purification. He was never meant to stay. He was meant to awaken you. When the confrontation ends, she doesn't hate him. She doesn't need closure, revenge, or proof. She only needs one sentence whispered like a prayer. You were never mine. You were my mirror. And as the words leave her lips, the illusion dissolves. Not because he changed, but because she finally saw through the reflection. The man who wasn't real no longer holds her hostage. Because the woman who believed in him no longer exists. Dawn always comes quietly after the storm. The ache doesn't vanish, it refines. Where there was obsession, now there is awareness. Where there was waiting, there is witnessing. She no longer looks for his name in her dreams. The silence that once haunted her now breathes like a friend. There's no triumph, no dramatic revelation, just stillness. That sacred kind of stillness that follows when the psyche has finally told the truth. She walks through the same world, but it feels different. Colors sharpen. Time softens. The train window that once mirrored her longing now reflects her becoming. The world hasn't changed, she has. Integration is not forgetting. It's remembering, stitching the self back together from fragments of fantasy. She reclaims the parts she gave away. Her patience, her softness, her hunger to be seen. They return not as wounds, but as wisdom. The man who wasn't real becomes an archetype in her mythology. The threshold guardian she had to pass through to meet her own soul. He was the eclipse, and she was the light trying to shine through. Now she knows every eclipse ends. Every shadow moves, and when the light returns, it doesn't ask for permission. She begins to live differently. Not performatively, not protectively, but consciously. Her new power is quiet, like the ocean that no longer needs to prove its depth. She speaks less, but means more. She gives, but never leaks. She feels desire again, but this time, it's directed inward toward life itself, not toward an image of completion. Desire is no longer a trap, it's a compass. She understands now that every longing is an invitation not to chase, but to integrate. The heart doesn't want possession, it wants presence. The psyche doesn't want fantasy, it wants truth. And truth, when loved, becomes liberation. Some nights, she still feels the echo. A flicker of memory, a scent, a sound, the ghost returning not to haunt, but to remind. But she doesn't run from it. She smiles, because she knows that the man she once waited for was never a mistake. He was a message, Every mirror carries a message. What you seek in another is the part of you you've forgotten to love. Now, when she sees her reflection, she doesn't ask for anyone to complete it. She looks, and she recognizes. The waiting was never for him. It was for the day she could finally see herself clearly. She waited for a man who wasn't real. But through him, she became a woman who is. The woman who understands her desire, no longer chases love, she becomes it.